I've booked all my yoga classes for this week. I tend to only drink healthy, eat healthy. I got a brand new gratitude journal, and I still feel stressed. Recognize this? Hi, I'm Paul, and I'll be hosting today's topic of the masterclass on self-care, the beautiful art of properly taking care of yourself, whether that's through healthy eating, taking care of your mental health, working out, or maybe canceling some plans and staying a night on the couch. Before we dive in, just know that, well, beautiful to see already. There's the option to interact in the chat. Lovely to see so many people already actively joining the chat. If you have any questions, you can put the questions in the questions tab. It's at the bottom right of this software. And then at the end of the masterclass, we are going to dive into them during a Q&A. Now, let's have a look at self-care. We're going to look at self-care from three different angles. First, we're going to look at the difference between self-care as a concept and self-care from within. Then we're going to look at all the reasons why taking care of yourself is hard. I'm seeing, let's see, over 240 people in this masterclass. I'm pretty sure that it's quite normal to find this topic of self-care difficult, and there's reasons for it. So we found a couple of psychological theories, determinants that can explain why taking care of yourself is hard. However, it's not only that, because there are new ways of taking care of yourself that are more sustainable. They take a little bit more work, they take effort, but they're worth it. Now, before we dive into everything, by show of emojis, I'm already seeing some people use emojis. I think it's called react at the bottom. By show of thumbs up, who here believes that they should take better care of themselves? There we go. No surprise there. I mean, it's the right target audience I chose because you're here for a masterclass on self-care. But I think this is a feeling that a lot of people can understand and resonate with. And that ties into the first bit of the masterclass that we're going to look at. Self-care as a concept versus self-care from within. Now, self-care as a concept, and I think I phrased the question a bit, I did that a bit to trick you. Do you feel like you should take better care of yourself? I think that such a motivation to take care of yourself has been triggered by something that has happened as of late, which is that self-care has become this concept, this nagging thing that we all feel we should do, right? You've got all these self-help gurus telling you to do these 5 tips to never feel stressed again, or to manifest a happy and healthy body, or the quote, self-care is not self-indulgence, self-preservation. It's true. It's absolutely true. And these tips, they can be very beneficial, but it's other people telling you how you should do self-care. And also an extra additional side effect of this is that when you do feel stressed, when you do feel not super well, you can come to the conclusion that you're doing something wrong, that it's your fault, which is not the case. And we want to go back from this self-care as a concept towards what self-care actually used to be at the very start. And it is a nurturing, nourishing approach towards yourself from the genuine desire to love yourself. It's the difference between I need to do self-care because if I don't, I'm going to end up burned out, or I need to do self-care because everyone's doing it. So I need to plan all my yoga classes, in our blocked agendas, which are already too full. And the difference, it's that self-care as a concept, and then there's self-care from within, which is I want to take care of myself because I deserve it. Easier said than done, which is actually explainable. Taking care of yourself is hard. There are multiple reasons why it's really difficult to properly take care of yourself. We've decided to take 3 that we find most important, that are also interplaying with each other. And we're going to dive into it a little bit. just to create some context as to why it is hard. And understanding why it is hard can also help us to create new ways of taking care of ourselves that are more sustainable. The 3 reasons we picked have to do with not properly feeling what my needs or my boundaries are. And then even if I do feel them, we either feel guilty prioritizing them and or not having the energy to do what's best. The first one, let's have a look. Never really learning to listen to our feelings. Now, I want to emphasize that it's mostly about the quote-unquote negative feelings that we experience. Just imagine you are in a supermarket and either you are one of those little kids with a parent, or maybe you're seeing a little kid with a parent, and the kid gets agitated. Maybe it's bored, maybe it's hungry, something's happening, and they're about to cry, or they're about to get, I don't know, fighty. What we do more often than not, and luckily it is changing. There's a new trend of parenting coming around, but if you're watching this masterclass, probably you're of a generation where there's a pretty high chance that people told us to not feel those feelings, or to distract them from having those feelings, right? You know, a kid's falling and immediately we go, "Ooh, you're fine, you're okay." It's a way to avoid quote unquote negative feelings like sadness or anger or disgust. But these emotions are actually signals, and once we learn to tune in with our body and we understand what these signals are trying to tell us, that's when we can start properly taking care of ourselves based on those things we are feeling. Now, I'm not saying that no control over your emotions, like no control whatsoever is a good thing. Like there is obviously, it's good not to be overwhelmed by your emotions. But that's the difference, right? That's where the socialization that we as a culture have done differs from this new approach. Instead of saying pushing down these emotions, I don't want to have them, I'm distracting ourselves, which nowadays is even more easier because we can just grab our phone and distract ourselves whenever we're not feeling well. But you can also acknowledge that these feelings are there, accept them, feel them, but not be overwhelmed by them. The second one is where we want to go. We'll talk later about how you can get there. First, we're going to look at the second reason, that self-care is actually kind of hard. Because even if you do feel what you need, let's say, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't feeling that well. I was on the couch, and when I don't really feel well, the way I distract myself is by planning my calendar full with activities. So I had something planned that evening with friends, but if I truly checked in with myself, what I needed was to go for a long walk, just calm down after another busy day and not meet those friends. But if you are me, you'll feel guilty because you don't want to cancel on your friends. You want to be seen as a nice person. You want to be liked. That's a very, very human experience. We all want to be liked. So we start to feel guilty, and then we start prioritizing others over ourselves, over what we actually need. Now, guilt also is an emotion. So it's signaling us that what we're about to do or what we're thinking about doing might not be in line with who we want to be. But for those, especially those with a lower self-esteem, this sort of guiltometer is a bit skewed too far to the right, and we start to feel guilty too fast. So if you notice that most of the things you do out of guilt, then this is probably one of the strongest pitfalls for you. And also, we're going to have a look at how to work on this a little bit later. Also, curious, because I just said feeling guilty for me often arises when I'm canceling friends, but just you can answer in the chat. I'm curious to see how it's divided. When do you feel this social guilt? For some, it's family. For some, it's with coworkers, and for some, it's total strangers. Right? They don't feel guilty with people they know, but then for total strangers, they're all super wary. I think it's nice to see what other people are feeling here. Ooh, there's the FOMO as well. Yeah, seeing a lot of family Yeah. So if guilt is not only on one specific topic, but a general theme, then well, at least now you know that is the core thing you need to be working on. The third reason why self-care is hard has to do with self-regulatory depletion. Big words, but it's actually quite easy to understand because I think a lot of people will have experienced this feeling. You can see it as a muscle. Self-regulation is something we do all day long. So it's a filter for our impulses. I'll give you some examples. So what self-regulation is, for example, let's say you've got amazing coffee at work, but you don't want to drink more than 3 cups of coffee. And you go to the office and you drink your first 3 cups of coffee, and you're about to get your 4th one and you say, no, I've made a deal with myself, I'll only have 3. You're using your self-regulatory muscle there. Then it's lunchtime. You want to be more healthier. Everyone's having toasties. And yes, this is a personal example. And it becomes really hard to say no to that because you want to be more healthy. But okay, I say no to that. I'm regulating my impulse. And then you get into this meeting and there's that coworker that just brings in another idea where you think, oh my God, how do you come up with these ideas? And instead of saying, Dave, shut up, you say, interesting point, Dave, but let's stick to the agenda. You're being a professional. Now, this all takes self-regulatory work. This is you telling no to yourself. This is regulating yourself. And like with any muscle, it can wear out. That's why more often than not, during the evening, we are way worse at regulating ourselves because we've been doing it all day. And that also adds up during the day. So on Friday, try to self-regulate on a Friday afternoon. That's hard. So that's kind of sad, right? Like it's kind of depressing, like, oh my God. So it's really, really hard to self-regulate because it tires out. Yes, that is the sad part. But the good thing, like any muscle, you can train it. And you can use different kinds of energies to motivate yourself. Different ways of motivating yourself gives different types of energy to actually do it, which is a nice bridge towards the final act, which is, okay, we know these things. Then how do we act on it? How do we actually start taking care of ourselves from within? There's a couple of tips, and we're going to dive into one of them a bit deeper. And we're going to start with learning to connect with yourself. Now, like I said, this is for many of us something that we really need to practice, something, some are better at it than others, but most of us, especially with the negative emotions, can be quite hard to listen to what am I feeling and what does that mean? In the handout, which also I'll remind you again later at the end of the masterclass, the handout is a thing you can get through, I think through apps or something at the bottom, and you can click handout and then you can download it, but do that at the end of the masterclass. But there's a mindful check-in. And the mindful check-in means that you're going to stand still for a little bit and truly listen. And then questions like, what am I feeling right now? Or one of my favorites, if this feeling could tell me anything, what would it tell me right now? These kind of questions to trigger that, okay, hey, I am feeling something, even though it's the feeling I don't like, but I'm going to listen to it. And then with regards to self-care, ask yourself the question, will I feel better after doing X or Y? For example, will I feel better after doing, I don't know, going to the gym? Or maybe what I really need right now is to lay on the couch, do nothing. This still can be hard, especially for those that are a bit further removed from those emotions. Then I want to challenge you to experiment with it. Just for the coming days or weeks, journal. I already see someone, that's great coincidence, Jeffrey in the chat, throwing that to keeping a journal. That's how you learn, okay, what am I feeling right now? Also, did something happen today that made me feel this way? Also, okay, I'm feeling this, let's experiment. Every time I feel this, I'm gonna, for example, go for a walk, or I'm going to call a good friend, or I'm going to take 10 minutes to meditate. Try different things and then journal about what that does to you. That way you will learn better to listen to those feelings, and also what you need to do to get there, to get to those feelings, to nurture them and nourish them. All right, let's say, for example, I'm a bit hungover on a Sunday. I wanted to go to the gym, but I'm laying in bed and I'm staying there. But I check in with myself. All right, what do I really need right now? What do I really feel? Okay, yes, I feel hungover, but will I feel better if I stay in bed right now, or will I feel better after doing yoga? All right, I think the honest answer is if I go to yoga, which is because I like yoga. I'm not telling you to do yoga. Again, check in with yourself and figure out what you need. But for me, that's yoga. Then tip 2, learn to set your boundaries and practice with it. Now, we could have hosted an entire masterclass on this topic. So we're going to keep it short and then implore you to visit our website and go to Spaces, because there we have group sessions, different ones, one specifically on how to better set boundaries. And then there's other ones too, like confidence and limiting beliefs, how to become more confident in yourself, which will help you set those boundaries. For this masterclass, to give ourselves some time to dive deeper into another tip, I think the easiest tip for setting boundaries is to start small. Also here, start experimenting and journal. For example, instead of saying yes to everything that comes your way at work, start saying maybe, I'll let you know later. It's a very easy trick to just postponing it. And then the next time you can go, no, I don't think I have the time. And then the final step, you can say, nope, without even giving any argument. You can also try this, if this is still too big, the idea of saying no to your coworkers, practice it in a supermarket. When they ask you, do you want a receipt? Say no instead of no thanks. It will give you this uneasy feeling, but trust me, it will get better over time. You will become better at setting those boundaries. Then, getting the right motivation. Now, if you've seen one of my previous masterclasses, I think it was the one on imposter syndrome, this will ring a bell, because we're going to use a research that we've used there and then as well. It's about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. The reason we decided to again use this research is twofold. One, because it's just so damn important. And two, because the last time we used it, we didn't really dive deeper into it. And we feel that we can take more out of this understanding of what motivation is and what motivation does in order for us to better take care of ourselves. So, a short recap. Extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. One of my favorite researches ever done by Loveland and Ollie is on the difference of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. They researched a class with a bunch of kids in them, divided by two groups. Those who are intrinsically motivated, had a high interest in drawing. Sorry, I just really love the content team for taking this picture. And what you see there is that the kids who are intrinsically motivated, they drew more and the quality of the pictures were better. And those that weren't intrinsically motivated drew less and the quality was, well, as you can see, not great. And what they did is they added an extrinsic layer. So they gave the kids stickers or candy whenever they drew a picture. And what they saw is that in the beginning, there was a short boost, right? People would draw more. But then after a while, especially for those that were intrinsically motivated, quality went down. They lost their interest. And then only when they took the extrinsic motivation away, after a couple of weeks, intrinsic motivation came back again and the quality went up. What this showcases is that extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation have different kinds of, there are different kind of fuel for you to act on. Now, the last time we sort of stopped there, but it's not as binary as that. there is actually a motivational spectrum going all the way from amotivation, which is anti-motivation, which is I just don't care for it, so I'm not going to do it. And then there's all the way on the other side, there's intrinsic motivation, which is I fully am committed and get fulfillment out of doing this act. And then there's all these bits in between. And understanding them is very important for how to get more towards more integrated or intrinsic motivation. External regulation is something we do quite often. It has to do with reward and punishment. So let's say that example, I'm hungover and I'm in bed and I want to go to yoga, but okay, I'm going to motivate myself. I haven't been to yoga for 2 weeks now, so I have to go. That's me punishing myself for not going to yoga. That's external regulation. Or I can say I can go to yoga and then afterwards I can get one of those muffin croissant thingies that are very popular nowadays, those croissants. Okay, cool. I'm going to reward myself for going to yoga. External regulation works for a little bit, not sustainable. Then there's introjected motivation. That's when we use social comparison to motivate ourselves. For example, I'm seeing all these people do yoga and take care of themselves, and I want to keep up. So I'm going to do it as well. It works. But again, it's not the best fuel, right? You can feel it, right? Like it's if I'm going to yoga just because I want to keep up with the rest, let's try to move a bit more towards intrinsic. That's when we get to identify motivation. That's when we focus our attention on the why, understanding the why that this act of self-care is good for us. For example, it is important to take care of myself. It is important to be healthy. I understand why doing this will help me feel healthy. Then we can go even one step further towards integrated. And that's when we use values. So those are the values we live by, the things we find important in life, and we link that to the why of doing self-care. So for example, something I value is authenticity. Something that happens for me when I'm at yoga is I become introspective. I start to listen inwards. So when I say yoga helps me become more introspective, which is something I value because I want to be honest and authentic, that's way more motivating for me to get out of bed and actually go to yoga. And that's how we get from amotivation all the way to external regulation. Now, let's do that together. Let's practice. But before we look at motivation, always step one, check in with yourself. So who, maybe in the chat, someone has an example of when they knew that they checked in, or they started to think, okay, what will I do? And they know that they should do something because they will feel better about themselves. Like it's like intrinsic, like sort of like check in, and they go, yes, I don't know, I should cook a healthy meal, or I will feel better about myself if I connect with friends instead of watching Netflix. So if there's anyone in the chat with an example, if not, I'm just going to use another one of mine examples. I've got enough. I have a quick look. Cool. Doing volunteer work. That's beautiful, Wendy. Nice. All right, let's say you check in with yourself, and something that you really want to do is do volunteer work. And then let's say, for example, the way you motivate yourself, right? Let's look at motivation. And you say, I want to do some work for others, some volunteering, because other people are doing it. And, you know, I'm seeing all these people do it, and I sort of feel guilty for not doing it. What kind of motivation is that? Let me know in the chat if you think you get what kind of motivation this is. Where are we? If we're saying, I mean, everyone's doing it, I sort of need to do it. Yeah, right. It's introjected. And indeed, it is guilt. It is guilt based on introjection, because you're using your social comparison. You're comparing yourself, right? Now, let's say all right, I want to do volunteer work. And if I do volunteer work, then I'm also allowed to go on an extra long holiday. What kind of motivation is that? External, right? You guys are nailing it. Let's try to move from external and introjected towards more integrated motivation. We're going to do it step by step. Step 1, pick a couple of values. We set 3 here, but you can pick how many you want. But values that you resonate with. We're going to show you a list of values later on. I'm going to pick a couple. You don't have enough time during this masterclass to select those values that resonate with you. But again, also these are in the handout. So you can do this after the masterclass. And yeah, I ask you to just pick a couple of values that resonate with you most. Then you formulate your why. You find why you want to do this act of self-care. Maybe that going for, do volunteering work is something you want to do, and is something that is part of self-care for you. Maybe that is making you feel better. And then step 3, acting according to your values. Now, let's take a look. Picking 3 values. Now, again, I know these are way too many values to immediately find 3, but let's say it's adventure, it's fun, and it is, let's see, understanding. These are values that really resonate with you. And you're still at the introjected motivation. You want to move towards integrated. Okay, cool. Well, we've found that these things that value us, like adventure and fun, and also kindness. I don't know if it was kindness. I'm going to use kindness now. Okay, cool. Let's use the example again of volunteering. Right? Volunteering is something you want to do and something that will make you feel better. But you can't really motivate yourself. Find those values. I value kindness. I value adventure. Okay, I understand why volunteering is something that is both adventurous, and it also taps into my desire to be kind, because I value kindness. This kind of motivation, if you can feel it, is already way more energizing to actually get to work. Now, once you get to integrated, it's time to act on them, to act according to your values. Now, let's say you've checked in with yourself, you've overcome your guilt, and you found the right fuel to motivate yourself, and you still struggle to act on it. That's when we go back to the self-regulatory muscle. Because step 4 is you can train your self-regulatory muscle. You can train the filter against your impulse. So let's say you've done all this work, and then you've come towards this integrated motivation, and you really want to do it, but your impulse is telling you, oh, but I don't have the energy, I don't have the time. That's when we can use a self-regulatory muscle to say, hey, I can feel this, I can have this mood of, oh, I can't, I don't want to, but still decide to act according to our values. That takes self-regulatory muscle, and that is something you can train. And just like with setting boundaries, it's all about starting small. So let's say, for example, I want to drink less. Usually I go out to friends and I drink a couple of beers, and well, once I've had 3 or 4 in me, it starts to get to like 6, 7, or 8. I want to drink less. Training my self-regulatory muscle does not mean me telling myself, okay, cool, I'm going to go out to friends and then I'm going to not drink. That's really hard to do if you're used to just drinking a bunch in a certain evening. So what you can do is you start small. You say, okay, if I usually drink this, I'm going to drink maximum of 5 beers. I'm going to have 2 glasses of water in between. Just like start small, something you can do. And then through experiencing success, you will gain confidence in yourself and you will grow your self-regulatory muscle. And the beauty about it is that it will spill over to other parts of your life. So just find parts in your life where you can train your self-regulatory muscle, where you can train saying no to your impulses, and then you can grow that. So to summarize, self-care from within starts with checking in with yourself. What am I feeling? Am I saying yes or no to this emotion? What is it trying to tell me, and when will I feel better? Then, if you feel guilty, prioritizing that, practice with setting boundaries. Also, to find the right fuel to act on them, determine the why and link it to your values. Then once you've done all that work and you still struggle to act on it, then you know it's time to practice your self-regulatory muscle. And again, start small. No need to be perfect straight away. Now, it's quite a lot of information. No, you can always watch the recording back on YouTube. I want to thank you so much for participating and interacting, and I hope that you will all start to practice self-care from within, not because you feel like you must, but because you deserve it. We've given you some documents in the handout, which again is at the bottom right. I think through apps, you can go to handout and then you can download the mindful check-in and the value checklist. For now, I want to thank you all for paying attention. We're going to have a little break. Then we're going to do a Q&A where I'm going to answer a couple of your questions. And if you check in with yourself and you're feeling right now, I've had enough, then you can log off, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you, Paul, for these amazing insights. I think a lot of people in the chat recognize themselves a lot in it. People were also giving each other advice, which was really
Nice.
really great to see. So now we're gonna dive into the questions. If people still have other questions, you can put them in the questions tab below. But one of the main questions that was asked by Rosa was, how can I strike a balance between empathizing with others and taking care of my own needs without overthinking and feeling overwhelmed?
Right. So that ties into the guilt topic, I think, where there's a genuine desire to be empathetic towards others, and this can also be a value of yours, right? You want to be kind, you want to have empathy for others. It always, for me, what always comes up when I have these questions, because it is a genuine struggle, right? You want to be able to take care of yourself, you want to be able to take care of others. If you're here in this masterclass, I'm assuming that you might lean a bit more towards caring for others. And then I'd say experiment with it. Maybe if you feel that it's a struggle for you, then maybe try to prioritize yourself a little bit more, see how that goes, see how you feel about that. I think the metaphor I've heard once and used always ever since is the one from you hear once you step in an airplane. The moment something's happening, you first got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others properly. So with that in mind, try to prioritize yourself a bit more, see how that feels, see how that goes. And then the add-on question, which was without feeling, overwhelmed or feeling guilty. I think especially in the beginning, it's about enduring those feelings. Those feelings will be there. You are a person who, as of now, feels guilty when they prioritize themselves. So it's not about how can I get to a point where I don't feel guilty. It's about doing it even though I feel guilty, but I know it's the right thing to do. And then over time, through experiencing that it's okay to prioritize yourself, the guilt will slowly go down.
So it's also about it's getting easier over time.
It will get easier over time, yeah. But it's in the beginning, it will hurt a little bit, right? You will feel that guilt.
Yeah.
And that's, again, coming back to the socialization, what we then tend to do, we want to avoid that. So we don't want to feel guilty. So we go prioritize others over ourselves. Instead, enduring that guilt for a little bit and prioritizing yourself can be beneficial.
Yeah, which also makes sense, right? If you've been doing it your whole life like that, and in the beginning it is going to be uncomfortable and it is going to be hard, which is then also okay.
Which is okay, yeah. And it's also very okay to then start small or ask for help. If it's something that feels really overwhelming, know that there's help for this. Yeah.
Nice. And what I also saw in the chat, and this was especially when it came to family, I saw a lot of family coming up. Yeah. They were like, even if they intrinsically know what's best for them, they do get the external pressure from other people. How do you think people can better deal with that?
It's a tough topic. Yeah, I think many of us experience this external regulation on how we should act within a family, and there's different expectations within family than with friends. I'm gonna stick with a very similar answer to the first one. If you truly feel that, like, so what I'm not saying don't go to family anymore, right? Don't get me wrong, but it has to do with balance. So if every single time you go to your family, you feel you go out of guilt, and it's because of this, this external pressure, then skip once. Just skip once and see how it goes, and then maybe the external pressure will rise, making it harder for you. But just endure that. Again, like, it will give those negative emotions, those negative feelings, and in order to avoid those, we go, right? We just go to our family then. But it's about enduring it, and it will get easier over time. So then it will be easier to occasionally say, you know what? I appreciate you. You're my family. I love you unconditionally. But what I need right now is to stay at home.
Yeah. Yeah, and also the discussion and what you're saying, and having that with your family and setting those boundaries to them and saying, like, hey, maybe this is not the best thing for me at the moment.
Right. And whenever you are doing that, to talk from your perspective, to try to steer away from saying, you pressure me, you do this. Because the moment, even though it might be correct, even though your feelings of frustration are absolutely valid, the moment you use other people's intentions or actions, you put them on the defensive. So just say, whenever you ask me to come and say things like, you haven't been here for a while, like just like a concrete action, it makes me feel guilty, and I don't like feeling guilty and then come. I like to come because I want to come. So maybe next time, could you not say that?
And I mean, if they're your family, they love you and they want you to want to go there, not be pressured into.
Yeah, definitely. Love is still complicated though. For some families, it just doesn't work that way, and it's about setting those boundaries and enduring the discomfort.
Nice. Okay, then we go into another question. And this is from Virag, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's, how do you differentiate authentic goals from a picture of who you think you should be?
Oh, wonderful question. I love this question. Yes, because this has to do with values. So what do I value? And then, is that value there because I've been born in a certain culture, watching certain movies and having a family that tells me, money is important, or honesty is important, or family is important. And then you get into this sort of identity crisis where it's like, what part is mine and what part is from others? But what I always tell people, like, it's okay that it's a mix. And it's okay that there's values where you value them and they're already a part of you. And then there's things you value, but you can't really live according to them yet. And also, values change over time. So what you value now might be because that's what you've always been taught. And if you're currently struggling with, hey, what are my values and what are my family's values? Maybe you are right at this intersection where you were living according to other people's values, and you're now starting to learn what you value and how that differs from your family. That doesn't mean that those earlier values were wrong. It was just that you are changing as a person.
Yeah. And that it's okay, that those values change over time.
It's absolutely fine. Yeah, you can change those values.
I really liked in your masterclass also the just practicing and playing with it part.
Yeah.
And just experiencing it as you go, and then just seeing, oh, this works for me. Oh, this doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do that as well with values. If you struggle with, hey, what do I value? Like a value checklist can be helpful to see all these kind of values and sort of try to resonate with a couple of them. But sometimes it's also one exercise I recently read about in a book on values is to pick a couple of values and then at the morning say, I'm gonna focus on this value for today. So let's say acceptance, and then just like really focus on that value throughout the day and see how that feels. Just try to accept everything that comes your way and then go, yeah, is this something that resonates with me, yes or no? And then go for honesty. Be really honest that day. See how that feels. Yeah. Just have fun with it.
It's a fun process if you explain it like that. Just trying different things on and seeing how they feel.
Yeah, see how it feels, see how it sticks.
And how people react to it as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, then we're going into the next question. Which is from Caroline. I struggle to implement self-care in my professional life at work. Any tips on how to be more successful here?
This one's a little bit hard without context because I don't know what exactly the struggle is. But the most common theme within self-care in a professional setting is about setting boundaries. Is about you want to be the best version of yourself. That's also an assumption, by the way. But many people in a professional setting, they want to grow and they want to become better, but they also want to take care of themselves. And sometimes that conflicts with each other. Sometimes there are expectations, for example, from work to achieve on a level that's really, really, really asking a lot of you. And you check in with yourself and you realize, well, actually what I need is to not do these things, is to say no. Then it really is about taking the time, stepping back and thinking, hey, how much do I value this work and this professional life that I'm trying to chase? And how much of my mental well-being is it worth? I'm a psychologist. I will always tell you your mental well-being is more important. But some people really do want to be extremely successful. And like, I'm not going to judge that. That's okay. But make it a conscious decision. Stand still. Ask yourself, is my well-being worth it? If no, practice setting boundaries.
Yeah, good one. Thanks for that. I think we're going to go into the final question of this masterclass, which is by Tanashi. And it is, how is intrinsic motivation related to the muscle of self-regulation?
Gotta think a little bit about that one.
Yeah, of course. It's a bit
because
a trickier one.
I think so. There's a theory I have to think of right now is called theory of planned behavior. It's a little bit technical now, but what it comes down to is there's different determinants how to get from intention to motivation to action. And what we talked about with regards to motivation and the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic is that it's sort of a different kind of fuel. It's a different kind of motivation to start acting on something. However, there's always impulses, there's always moods and emotions. Let's say, for example, I am intrinsically motivated to cook myself a healthy meal, but I'm actually kind of tired after a long day of working. That feeling of being tired, that feeling of being drained, like acknowledging that feeling is there, but then saying I'm still going to do it, that's the self-regulatory muscle. So there's sort of like there's motivation and then there's action, and self-regulatory muscle is like the the split moment in between that to get into action. And yes, more intrinsic motivation has a higher chance of you actually acting on it. So I think you need less self-regulatory strength to get there. But yeah, so they are slightly on different positions within the.
Yeah. I recognize this also in my own life, where I always told myself that I should work out like 3 times a week because I felt like I should be doing that. And then I went to the gym, which I actually didn't really like. But then I got into climbing, which is something that I am intrinsically motivated to do. And then you still have these moments of like, do I want to go today? But then for some reason, the self-regulation still needs to be there, but it does feel easier, at least for me, because I want to do it and I want to get better at it. Yeah. And it comes more from within, but it's still. You still actually have to do it.
You still need the self-regulation. Yeah. So it's sort of the next step, and yes, more intrinsic motivation makes it easier, but they are separate.
Yeah. Nice. It's all about the balance again.
Nope, all about balance. Yeah. We could have done this masterclass in 1 minute. It's just about balance.
Just balance. Well, Paul, I really want to thank you for your time today and for these also very practical insights. Again, if you want to work on this yourself, the handouts you can find under the apps function below, and then you can start practicing also the check-ins that Paul has mentioned. Then I want to thank you all at home as well. Wish you a very good afternoon, and get practicing on some self-care.
Yeah. See ya.